excited to be here and really excited about Neuromatch Academy.
I can go next. I'm Stephanie Noffelfacker. I also work on the BCI team with Emily. Happy to talk about career. Mine is interesting. I started in academia, went to government, and then now at FRL. So any questions you have, happy to talk about career transitions.
Hi, I'm Carlos Hernandez. I've been at Control Labs for about 2 years now, and I work on extracting stable representations from our EMG signal. Before Control Labs, I was doing my PhD at Stanford in biophysics, specifically on the distributed computing project called Folding at Home. So very different from neuroscience, but I was studying representation learning of protein dynamics, which has some interesting overlaps.
Cool. It's really nice to meet you guys. I haven't met any of you before, so except for Ron. So thanks for coming and joining us. And I think why don't we? So I think Steph, you were kind of going down this road. I think probably one of the things that the students are really excited to hear about is how did you end up where you are, and where did you come from? And so maybe we can just go around the room. I don't know if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's very existential. So who am I? How did I get here? So
That's how we do it at Neuromatch Academy.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I am a biomedical engineer through and through. So I did my undergrad and my master's at Arizona State. Did this on sensory brain-computer interfaces. Went on to do a PhD at Northwestern. And this was in motor BCI. So we were recording from motor cortex using algorithms. I think you guys are learning about some of these this week, and using that signal to predict muscle activity.
What were the algorithms you were using? I'm sure that would be a nice point of reference here.
Yeah, pretty simple. The Kalman filter is the workhorse of BCI. So Kalman filters, Wiener filters, various neural nets. The RNN is my friend. So part of it was just comparing what were the gains of switching to different algorithms and the like. So did that for a while, a motor learning background, very similar to what the control team is doing. And then, so after grad school, I did not plan to stay in academia. So it was always my goal to kind of get out and maybe do science policy. So I started looking for jobs in DC and found a job as a scientific advisor to DARPA, which is the DoD's research branch. Super cool job. Most of what I was doing was lifting off research programs. So we had a sensory neuroprosthetics program, spinal cord injury programs. We kicked off an AI for neurotech effort. It was called Intelligent Neural Interfaces. And one of the topics, which I wrote kind of based off of my PhD experiences, was how do we deal with the instability of neuroprosthetics? So you get neurons dropping out, weird performances day to day. So how do we smooth that out? Let's see what else. Also a non-invasive neurotech program. We launched that. That was one of the first programs I worked on. Made me a good candidate to come to FRL, where we're working on a non-invasive interface. My job here is super cool. I get to work with our external collaborators, figure out who's who in the zoo, and we contract with different organizations to do various things, work on decoding, work on hardware, etc. So that's kind of my long version of my path to where I got to where I am.
Thank you. Vina, you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm actually from Phoenix originally. I didn't know that you went to ASU stuff. That's cool. But I went to Harvard for my undergrad, and I did neurobiology, so some rat optogenetics for that. And then afterwards, I took a bit of a sharp left turn and decided to move over to the Max Planck Institute in Tübingen, Germany, to do a PhD in machine learning methods for non-invasive BCIs. I'm not entirely sure why they let me in, but I'm very grateful that they did, because I thought it was a really great experience, and it was really cool to start on the biology side and then move towards the methods, because I feel like most people tend to go the other way. EEG-based BCIs are not great. And a lot of that is because the signal is really, really not great. And so a lot of the things that we struggle with there are similar to the problems that you've already mentioned here that happen in EMG, just in much worse form for EEG, like non-stationarity of signals across subjects and different sorts of paradigms and these sorts of things. So my interest is mostly in asking how we can try and deal with these in a simple and stable way, because you don't really get very much data with the EEG. So yeah, I finished my PhD in 2018, and then I did a short postdoc in the same area before coming over here to start working with control last June. And it's a really actually excellent to like moving from EEG to EMG is truly a wonderful thing, just because the signal is so many orders of magnitude better. And it turns out that all the problems that you thought were hard in EEG are actually solvable in EMG. So you get to worry about the things that you were actually excited to do from the beginning, like what are the paradigms people are going to do, and how can you make sure they're stable and not spend half an hour just putting your setup on someone's head only for it to not work because God knows what these days. I guess so my work these days is actually surprisingly similar to what my PhD was, just with a better signal and more support.
Great, thanks. Carlos?
Yeah, so I kind of had a wild path through biology. I did my undergrad at Columbia, focusing on bioinformatics, actually for surveillance of flu pandemics. So oddly timely now, but and kind of moved on to working in molecular dynamics. And so I really enjoyed that, and did my PhD at Stanford with Vijay Pandey, working on folding at home project. And at Stanford, kind of learned that I really enjoyed machine learning methods, and kind of caught the deep learning bug there, and started getting more involved in like representation learning. How do we encode dynamics specifically for protein folding, but more generally, just in general, how do we deal with temporal signals? And looking for a job after that, I wasn't really too keen on academia. There's a ton of startups in the Bay Area that were interesting to me, and I kind of looking around and found control labs in New York, which seemed interesting. Not a lot of startups in New York, and neural signals were kind of new and to me, anyways, and seemed like an interesting field. So I kind of jumped on it, and luckily, managed to get on board. And yeah.
Thank you, Emily.
Great. Yeah, I started as a biomedical engineer at Duke University. I took one elective neuroscience class and was hooked, right? I think everyone can relate to that feeling in Neuromatch Academy now. After my undergrad, I went to do a Fulbright. This is where Vinay and I have a little bit of overlap. We were both in Tübingen, Germany. It's a great spot for EEG BCI. There I worked with people with ALS, and that felt like a really rewarding project. It was a one-year project to work there. But one thing I was always struck by, as he mentioned, is how arduous the setup is for an EEG device. At the time, it was exclusively gel-based, and the temporal resolution is great, but the spatial resolution isn't. I went on to do a PhD in neural engineering at University of Illinois at Chicago, which has a relationship with the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. There I worked on decoding speech as an input mechanism for BCI. So I was working with both EMG and ECOG. So ECOG is kind of like EEG, but directly recording from the surface of the cortex. And I actually continued on at Northwestern. So I stayed in Chicago working on ECOG decoding of speech in awake craniotomies. So that's brain surgery where people are awake and talking. I would record the microphone signal of the speech, and I would record the brain signals and work on decoding that later. When I started, people didn't think that you could decode some of that information from speech motor cortex. So I'm really happy that we were able to prove that. I was sitting in my lab. Some of the work I was doing as a postdoc was EMG for rehabilitation with stroke survivors using real-time feedback. And we got a call from the press asking us to comment on Facebook's new brain-computer interface effort. And I didn't know anything about it at the time. I'd just gotten an F-32, so I was feeling pretty good about where I was at in terms of the academic path. but I at that time I knew that there's something else going on that was really exciting, and I moved across the country. So here I am in California now, and I've been at FRL ever since. And currently we're developing novel wearable hardware. We're trying to still approach this problem of how do you have something that's wearable that can get at that spatial and temporal resolution that Ron talked about, to have really better brain sensing that can lead to better BCI experiences.
Cool. And I guess, Ron, I don't want to skip you. You gave a quick introduction before, but I don't know if you want to sketch out your path in a little more detail.
Okay, I'll do it briefly. Yeah, so I did my PhD in Hebrew University with Chaim Sopolinsky. And I'm coming from theory, so theoretical neuroscience, thought a lot about temporal dynamics in the brain and how to learn how can neurons learn from spiking inputs, and how can they learn to produce specific spiking outputs, things like that, and develop like the theory for that, and try to derive mathematically the properties of these kind of systems. And I continue to do that in Colombia for my postdoc. And kind of, the opportunity came to kind of like collaborate with Control Labs, and because I kind of like personally knew the founders, and I met them at Columbia, and for me it was really the thing that attracted me most was being in an environment that is highly collaborative, that sometimes in academy is very hard to get. So for me, for me personally, it's about who I work with, also what I work on with, but the first thing, the truly thing, is that I want to work with great people, and I want to work in this collaborative environment that I can feel that I learn from other people that there, and that I can teach them what I know as well. Yeah, so that's what kind of like brought me to Control Labs, and I'm here still.
You're an emotions first kind of guy, apparently. Is that right? But I agree. I mean, there's nothing like having a good team. So I want to switch gears a little bit and get you guys maybe talking to each other. Thanks for the intro, but we had a bunch of questions in the chat around ethics. So what's the how do you think about privacy issues? How do you approach experimental design and make sure that you feel safe and that your participants will feel safe about it? And I'm curious how that's approached in terms of the research programs, and also maybe you can even think about prioritization and what the transition to Facebook was like in the context of these kinds of questions. So why don't you expand on that theme for a little bit, and let's see where we go.
I can probably kick this off. So part of my introduction that I didn't talk about is I love neuroethics. I've been engaged in neuroethics my entire career. There are really important issues that I think scientists should engage in. So I don't think you have to be an ethicist. I don't have a formal training, but I've been able to publish and speak at conferences and think about these issues deeply. So honestly, when I joined FRL, I was really excited because when I read their press releases in the past, they talked about ethics in a real concrete way. If you go back and read an announcement from, I think it was last year, Emily, right? They talk about ethics in a way that suggested that they're thinking about it in more than just a surface level way. And since I've been here, I've seen this play out. So we host speakers, we have journal clubs. I've been able to bring my interests into play. So we talk about neural data privacy. There's lots of questions there, like neural data may have the potential to reveal details about ourselves. So how do you handle that? Step one is getting the developers engaged and making sure they know what the considerations are. So we are very proactive about that, which makes me very excited. I've sat on the line with Carlos and Emily, and we've hashed this out. I think I'll kick it to you two for other questions, and maybe we can just pass it around.
Yeah, I'll jump in. When we were defining the program, we made neuroethics a pillar of it. And what does that really mean? It means that we talk about it early, we talk about it often. We engage third parties to evaluate and assess the things that we're doing internally. We deal with an external IRB, which is governed by the same rules and laws that any IRB and an academic institution would have. It's really all about, I'll sort of underscore something that Steph said, which is, you know, like, we might not be trained bioethicists, but we are the people closest to the technology. And I think just because you're not a trained bioethicist doesn't mean you shouldn't have ethical conversations or conversations about the ethics of what you're designing. And if anything, you're the closest people to the potential product, right? So you really want to have that kind of expertise weighing in. So it's been an ongoing conversation. I'm glad Steph saw that article that we had written and that took that as a takeaway. Her expertise is a wonderful addition to our team. And it's something that we talk about FRL wide. So it's never not a part of the conversation. So I'm really happy, but I'd love to hear what Carlos has to say about it too.
Yeah, I would just say that, like, as a startup, we you know, it's something that we were always conscious of. And since we were at the time more directly focused on product, you know, like we were building up to kind of like thinking about like, oh, what are all the different ways you could possibly use this technology? How could it go wrong? You know, what could it be used for? That sort of thing. And with acquisition, like, you know, now we have more resources to kind of build on that. And I'd say like a lot of the work that Steph and Emily had mentioned and have done, you know, are things that we're looking forward to taking advantage of and building into our technology.
I'll just add that as leader, we see ourselves as leaders in this field, and we're establishing some of the first steps in these technologies. And it's our obligation then to make sure that we are doing everything in a way that we would expect would be considered ethical by third parties.
And what's it been like with from that point of view, and then maybe we can expand the question also in the transition to Facebook?
Sorry, can you just clarify a little bit?
Sorry, I realized that I wasn't clear. I was wondering if like the approach to how that's changed when you're going from small group to a large group, and we could start maybe with the ethics piece, but then we could expand it to talk more generally. I mean, one of the things that on the general side that I'm interested in is the additional support that you would have. And how that could affect your ability to you know, put pieces together for the kind of work that you're doing.
What I'll just start with that, and then I'll kick it to anyone else that wants to chime in. Being at FRL really feels a lot like being at a small startup in terms of the interactions, the cross-functional communication. It's a lot of small teams, but then you have the leverage of a large organization, a big tech company. This is incredible when you get to work with, you know, just everything that Facebook has at its disposal, including things like language models or things like that can be really applied to these problems. You know, that's different from what you might be able to use at a small company. So there's quite a bit of that startup feel inside of our organization, which is really cool. In terms of that, as it applies to ethics, I think that there's a lot of great conversations within these small groups. And for me, that feels very similar to what you would find in academia with a lab, but sort of having that departmental level of support. But I'll let others chime in here too.
Well, the other thing is at FRL, we're researchers, but we can also be funders. So if you look on our research page, you'll see I believe there are two calls for proposals right now that are directly related to ethics. One is a privacy one. I think the other one is ethics, maybe an AI, but they're on there, and we are actively, you know, giving dollars to external organizations that are interested in helping us answer this question. And that's much more different than being in the lab.
Yeah, I'll say that also, like Facebook as a broader organization, has a lot of commitment to ethics and responsibility. There's different, levels to that and different pillars within the organization, even outside of FRL. And that applies to machine learning, AI, right? And also how like the products themselves are innovated. And we can leverage that within our organizations as well.
And am I correct in understanding, and I'm probably not, but the FRL group, which sort of came out of, part of it came out of Control Labs, but not all of it, is that right? And then there's a relationship between the sort of neuroscience group and the machine learning group that's run by Jan LeCun, or so maybe you guys could, because I suspect folks here would be interested in understanding.
I can comment on that. Yeah. So, okay. So FRL, maybe I didn't do a good, I didn't do a good job of presenting it. So FRL is a wider org that encompasses all the research for AR and VR. So it says, so inventing all the technology, not just neural interfaces and not, but also displays and other things, everything that needs to happen in order for us to have consumer grade VR and AR in the future. So, and that is the part that bought Control. I mean, Facebook acquired Control Labs, but we joined that organization. Okay, so now Control Labs is part of FRL, Facebook Reality Labs, but Emily and Steph are part of a different team. It's called the BCI team that is working on with friendly competitions with us on a different angle of trying to develop a neural interface. Does this make more sense?
Sure. I think the structures are big, and especially coming from academia, it's sometimes it's hard to wrap your mind all the way around it. I think we just have a couple minutes left, and the other thing that would be really nice for you guys to comment on a little bit. The student, what want to work. I mean, we took a little bit earlier on your path, but maybe you could touch also on the industry. Did you guys hear me?
Sorry, I think you broke up a bit.
Okay. Yeah, I saw everyone stop moving, and I was like, I think that's probably my problem. Yeah, I was just asking if about advice you'd have for students. So if they wanted to get to FRL, what should they do, or how should they think about it? Also, how do you make that decision? I think in academia we sort of tell everyone that they should stay on the academic path forever, right? Which of course is totally unsustainable. But at some point or another, people make the decision not to. And what's that like? And how? And what sort of can we give any of our students something concrete?
I can kick us off a little bit, at least in terms of what's one reason why you would want to move towards industry as opposed to stay in academia. Just thinking a little bit about my experience in the EEG BCI world, setups are very ad hoc. There's really no idea. There's really no culture around keeping code, preserved, because you do it for the project, it's done, you move on, and there's some, piece of C++ written in 2000 that you use to get everything running in the middle there, and no one worries about it because you just need to get the papers out. So one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about being in industry now is that there's an actual commitment to having replicable, well-designed workflows so that you can start asking more questions better without having to worry about if there was some weird bug that you just didn't think about because you were coding it poorly whenever you decided to make it work in the beginning. And I think that the support is something that does, at least in my experience, distinguish it quite a lot from academia, and is very nice within industry.
I think one thing for me was that in the startup space, at least, there's a lot of investment now going on in biotechnologies, and there's a lot of momentum and a lot of exciting research that is not even being done in academic labs in some sense. And I think Control Labs had a little bit of that, where motor neuroscience was kind of being ignored in academia, and really we had an opportunity to kind of push the boundaries of what was possible. And I think this is now a really good time to think beyond academia and kind of explore all options, specifically in startup spaces where there is kind of like a rich body of research that's going on, and I would include FRL in that as well, where we're doing things that not people didn't think was possible even a year, 2, 3 years ago, right? And this is where you can continue to do real research, be supported, and have a lot of resources put towards that.
And what about like advice? Like, I want to be an FRL employee. What should I do?
Be an intern with us.
What's that?
Come be an intern with us.
Come here. I'm probably too old to be an intern, but it's
no. You said student, so.
Well, I actually asked the question from the first person. I don't know if you noticed that. Tell the students what they should do if they want to work for you.
You should call me and we talk.
I think being here is step one. A lot of it is networking, knowing who the people are and what they do. Encourage you to look at our research site and see there's often calls for proposals. Are these of interest to your lab group? Is there a collaboration you can start now to learn what we're all about? And then I think the recruiters can speak to this as well, but look out for press releases, talk to us here. I think all of those are great starts.
What about career stage? PhD to, undergrad to PhD at the end of undergrad, at the end of PhD, at the end of postdoc. It sounds like we have a little bit of a mix on the panel. I guess everybody here has a PhD. Is that right? So how does that play in?
What I would say is that we are looking for good research scientists. So the things that would make you good at sticking with a PhD and asking the right questions, and a focus on application, like how are you applying these equations to your problem? How are you moving the needle? Those are the things that we look for. We also look for people that are, a little bit bored with the pace of academia, or a little bit sick of the slog of applying for grants and things like that. So if that sounds like something that's appealing to you, please, Steph had a lot of great comments there, like engage with us. We're available, we're around, and we really like finding really talented people that are excited about solving tough problems.
All right, well, I think we probably should switch gears, unless someone had some burning comment. I didn't want to cut anyone off. All right, so why don't we do that? I guess Megan is gonna figure that out. But to the 5 of you, thank you very much. Really appreciated getting to meet you all that I haven't met before, and good to see you, Ron. And I guess I'll see many of you in just a few more hours. So on the other side,
thank you so much.
On the other side of sleep, I guess.
It was great fun.
Yeah, take care. So Dan, am I or are you going to present these poll results here? I'm not really sure exactly what we were planning on doing.
Mostly, I was fascinated about the results for myself. I'm happy to present them. And just briefly, I'm Dan Wetmer, one of the neuroscientists on the Control Labs FRL team. And while we're kind of switching over panelists here, first of all, I'm really thankful for all my colleagues to join on a Saturday night and a Sunday morning, at least our times here. So, I did not know about Facebook Reality Labs before Control Labs was purchased by them. So this time last year, I would have been one of the people who said, I've never heard of Facebook Reality Labs. And part of doing this session is to make sure that for all of you, that is not the case anymore. And that you spread the word among other smart and interested people. So here we've got, about a third of folks had never heard of FRL. Half of you had heard of FRL, but didn't realize that neuroscience happens here. And then, 13% knew about all the great neuroscience work we're doing here. So, you know, some of the word's getting out. Certainly interested that most of the audience here is from academia, a few industry, and some overlap as well. And then I've certainly been interested, just observing the neuromatch community, that, you know, there's some people coming from computational expertise and learning more in the neuroscience, and then other members are kind of coming from the other side, which is a great complement. And so I've noticed, so it looks here like, you know, about a third of folks have expertise on both sides, about half coming from more in the neuroscience, and about 1 out of 5 coming from computational domain. So that's certainly interesting to me and helpful. So with
I don't
this, and
think
in
we
the
did
interest
that actually, or maybe we did and I didn't, but it's nice to see that this is kind of the split of the neuromatch community. So it's a good mix. Sorry to cut you off.
So with that, I'd like to hand it off. I'm really thankful to have 3 recruiters from FRL with us today, Sarah, Jacqueline, and Mark, and I will hand it off to each of you and maybe add some questions that come from the Q&A here in the Zoom. Thanks.
Awesome, Dan, and if you want to share our slides, that would be great. But it is so nice to be chatting with everyone today. So I'm Sarah, and I'm a PhD recruiter from Facebook Reality Labs, as they were mentioning earlier. So all of you, that split of you that are in academic, Jacqueline and I are both recruiters for all of you in academia that are currently enrolled or recent grads of a PhD program. And then my counter recruiter manager is also here, Mark Dixon. So I'll let them introduce themselves and their roles, but we are so excited to be here. We are the recruiters that work very closely with Control Labs since they've been acquired for Facebook Reality Labs. My particular role is once you've applied to a position and you're starting the interview process, I actually kind of walk you through that process, close you, and then for interns, I'm your intern recruiter when you're here, and then also if you're joining for a full-time position as well. My very close partner, Jacqueline, is also on the line, who I work super seamlessly with for all Control Labs people. So I'd love her to introduce herself and what her particular recruiting role is as well.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline. As Sarah mentioned, we work pretty closely together. My official job title is a sourcer. Basically, that means I'm responsible for the top of the funnel. So if you are an applicant, if I reach out to you, I'm more or less your first point of contact for a lot of roles at FRL, in particular for Control Labs. So if you apply, I'll be the first person to reach out to you, or you might receive an email from me at some point, just wondering if you might be interested in Control Labs. And I work with candidates up through our first phone screen, and then afterwards I would pass you off to Sarah for on-site and closing and all that. I'll let Mark go ahead and introduce himself as well.
Yeah, thanks to you both. So I think the easiest way to kind of describe my role is that, you know, my team focuses specifically on people who are in industry. So if you think about Sarah and Jacqueline are sort of on the side of, if you are a current postdoc in academia, if you're looking for an internship, if you've recently graduated with a master's or a PhD, my team focuses on everyone who's maybe been in the industry for about a year or so. So anyone who's in the industry already, my team would be the one that would be doing the same things that Jacqueline and Sarah said. We're just looking after the people that come from more of an industry experience.
Thanks, Mark. So one of the things that I heard a couple of times during the conversations today was related to internships. So I just want to be very open that we love interns and we love Control Labs interns. We actually have 11 Control Labs interns this summer. And then we start hiring for 2021 interns a little bit later in the fall. So around August, September, that's when PhD recruiting, so anyone currently enrolled or going to graduate next year, that's when we get headcount for all of you to hire into 2021. And I'm sure as a student or as potentially someone in industry, top of mind is just the nature of the world right now, everything going on with COVID, employment, fears around employment. And you know, it's important that Mark, Jacqueline, and I wanted to be here to kind of say, you know, Facebook is hiring, we are continuing to hire. We are investing a lot into this neuroscience, machine learning research within Facebook Reality Labs. Thanks so much, Dan. So we're just excited to be talking to you all today. And Jacqueline can talk a little bit about open positions that we have. But we have about, gosh, there's over 6 full-time positions posted right now, and our internship positions will become available in a couple of months. And Dan, if you want to click on slide 3, I would just like to highlight, I saw a question in the queue, basically, how do you apply to Facebook? So just really want to quickly go over that. For Mark, Jacqueline, and myself, any role you're applying to at Facebook, it's just www.facebook.com/careers. And all of our careers, all of our jobs are posted on that career site. And you can search. It's pretty cool. You can search in the handle neuroscience, and all of our neuroscience postings will pop up, or machine learning, anything. And I just want to make a caveat that we have jobs, a lot of our PhD jobs, as far as being currently enrolled in school, get posted more towards the school year. We follow an academic calendar, so they get posted usually in the fall, sometimes in the spring, and then we do most of our hiring through that September through May timeframe. So please feel free to visit this. And then I also, I'll go ahead and let Jacqueline talk about some of our open roles, and then she has kindly added her email address as well for all of you to jot down, as Jacqueline is top of funnel. So if you jot her email address down, you can ask her questions, or potentially you just want to get on her radar for positions that come up in the coming months. So Jacqueline, do you want to talk a little bit about roles that are currently posted, and then add anything else?
Yeah, so you can see from the slide here, this is just a pretty broad overview of some of the roles we have posted right now, especially for folks graduating in 2021 or folks looking to intern with us in 2021. We don't have a ton posted right now. As Sarah mentioned, we work on an academic calendar, so a lot of those new roles will be posted hopefully around September or October. So definitely keep an eye there. But this is just kind of a broad overview of some of the areas that we look into. So you can see at the top there, we have a neural interfaces research scientist position. That's going to be specific to control labs, so the folks that just presented now. But all of the other ones listed are either positions for Facebook Reality Labs, or for our kind of sister organization, which is Facebook Artificial Intelligence Research. You'll commonly see that abbreviated to FAIR. I also kind of wanted to highlight that we do hire across a variety of locations. So Control Labs will primarily be in New York City, but the rest of Facebook Reality Labs is based out of Redmond, Washington. We also have some folks at our headquarters down in Menlo Park, as well as offices in Canada, specifically in Montreal, and then Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Austin, Texas. And then in Europe, a lot of the FRL research is going to be based primarily in Zurich, Switzerland, but then we also have some opportunities in Cork, Ireland. So pretty broad, as you can see from the list, pretty broad range of disciplines, as well as a broad range of locations. Dan, if you could go to the next slide. This is my email. Feel free to jot it down. I'm always open to answering questions, taking resumes. If you are, again, as Sarah mentioned, and as I mentioned, I work primarily as an academic recruiter, but if you are someone who has industry experience currently working in industry, feel free to also shoot me an email. I work pretty closely with a lot of the folks on Mark's team, so I can really easily just forward your information along to one of them. Also, if you have an area of interest not listed, that list of jobs was a very, very small list of what we have open. Facebook Reality Labs is obviously working in the AR/VR space. So you can kind of think of anything, any research area that would be applicable to that, we're probably hiring for. We have a pretty robust computer vision team dealing with everything from like face and body tracking to SLAM, 3D reconstruction, to more hardware focused roles like soft robotics, haptics, polymer science, cameras, sensors. There's a whole team that builds like our prototypes and builds the actual like Oculus headset. So again, very, very broad. And if you are interested in any of those areas, or maybe have a colleague or something who is also interested, please feel free to send me an email. And I can, if I don't have any roles available for your research space, I can always forward your information along to one of my colleagues who might have a role for you. So, yeah.
And one of the questions that someone asked, actually, I feel like this would be a good time to bring it up, is, you know, what qualifies you for one of these roles? And just to be very clear, on a lot of job descriptions, there's minimum qualifications and then preferred qualifications. And really and truly, if you meet the minimum qualifications of a role, we highly encourage you to apply. The minimum qualifications are usually just surrounding, you know, do you have the degree in the research area of what this role needs? So we list oftentimes preferred qualifications, but it's not necessary for every role. And the nature of the work we do within FRL is it is so broad. And so we highly encourage, it varies role to role is really what I'm trying to say. And in the interview process, you might have several different kinds of researchers interviewing you, some who have, you know, more neuroscience backgrounds or more machine learning backgrounds, or something totally unrelated, like potentially soft robotics or something. And the whole idea is that we do not expect you to be an expert in every area. It's just more so we're testing collaboration because it's a highly collaborative environment. So yeah. I don't know if Mark, you want to add anything right now, or if Dan, you want to flag any questions that might have been raised earlier that we'd be happy to answer for anyone on the call.
The only thing I'd add is something actually Steph mentioned in the panel. You know, the career site actually is a lot broader than just a list of job descriptions. And so I always encourage people, go in there, click around. We have projects listed, we have specific teams listed, areas of work. So I think we have entire landing pages just dedicated to AI and machine learning. And so you might get details on specific projects that are going on, what jobs are open related to that work. So in general, my recommendation is always, if you're curious, you know, spend 30 minutes exploring the careers page, because it's a lot more than just the listing of job descriptions. There's a lot of detail there around specific teams and projects. And Steph sort of plugged that in the panel. So I just wanted to make sure that I underscored that.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Ishu. I'm actually tracking a couple other questions in the Q&A. You know, there's a question here about, is there anything someone at the undergrad level can do to make themselves competitive for positions within FRL besides getting a PhD? I'd love to hear what you guys think, but maybe I could just share kind of how we think about it, or have historically at Control Labs. What matters most is just having really talented people who are nice to work with. And I can tell you for a fact that we have a new hire starting shortly who interned with us as a rising junior undergrad and blew us away more so than interns who have a PhD. And we are ecstatic that he's coming back to work with us. There's another key member of our science team who operates beyond the level of most PhDs or postdocs and doesn't have a PhD, but is incredibly talented and like a key member of our team. On the other hand, like having a PhD, like there's just, you know, in my personal experience, some of the benefits of getting a PhD, you get deep expertise in an area, but you also just learn how to be strategic about problem solving. And we're working on problems that are like, we just don't know for sure what the right answer is. And a lot that you learn in a PhD is technical, but also a lot of it is strategic about how you approach complex problems. And those skill sets really matter. The one other thing that is clear to me on our team, the Control Labs group, it takes a blended set of skills. I do not have the deepest computational skills on the team, but I have experience in motor learning and a lot of other things that are helpful to the team. And there's other folks who come in and don't know very much about neuroscience, but are just incredible at at deep learning or other modeling techniques or signal processing. I will also note, and I think there were probably some job postings listed there. We bring in research engineers who are key members of our team. They create the tools that Vinay mentioned in the earlier panel that are stable, that really work, that are scalable, that let us do science really fast and really well without getting stuck in the weeds. So these are all different, roles that don't necessarily require a PhD. At the same time, Ron was joking with Sean a little bit, but we would definitely recruit Sean. We would recruit someone as senior as possible, who are even smarter than the people we have here, or more experienced, or more connected, because we want to work with the best people. And so, the key takeaway that I think about in terms of recruiting is, number one, check out the career page. I'll put my contact list in the chat, and on NeuroStars, feel free to reach out to me. But we're going to be doing this, approaching these hard problems for a really long time. And if you're ready for a job now and there's a posting that fits, apply. And if next year is a better time, or the year after, keep in touch, and maybe that's the right time to connect.
I can also, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, you can go, Jackie.
So Sarah and I have a colleague on our team who works specifically with undergraduate and master's degrees. So if you are someone who's listening, you have you're an undergrad or a master's student, also feel free to reach out to me. I can forward your information along to him. And we also don't have any restrictions for PhD interns as far as what year you are in your PhD. We've had people who have just started their PhD to people who complete their internship and they go back and they defend their dissertation. So a pretty broad range of what we look for in terms of experience level on the intern side as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to mention as well. To those of you that are listening that aren't in your PhD, we have an entire team dedicated to hiring interns, full-time bachelors and masters that are passionate about the AR/VR space. So definitely jot down Jacqueline's contact information. Those recruiters would probably better answer the question of how do you stand out. But from the little bit I've dabbed in that area, I think passion for the space is huge. What are you doing outside of the classroom to kind of drive this passion of AR/VR or neuroscience is something I really remember. But yes, happy to connect whomever with the appropriate recruiter as well.
Well, I wonder if we should get close to wrapping up here. I don't want to, if there's, if there's anything else left on the agenda, I don't want to cut it off, but we're getting close to, I think we're a few minutes over the time. So Dan, is that, are we?
That sounds great. Thank you, Sean, for hosting us and moderating, and to all of my fellow panelists and the whole audience. Thanks. Great questions.
Yeah, and I just want to say that this was really fun for me. I think, like I said at the very beginning, I've been aware of Control Lab since the very beginning and have been a fan on the sidelines. And I thought that Ron's demo was really amazing. And I'm really excited that you guys are doing well. And I think it would be a fantastic thing if some of our students or postdocs or TAs, excuse me, ended up connecting with you guys. So that's kind of the goal of NeuroMatch, is to provide paths forward for people in the field.
Sean, if I could add one thing real quick, because I think this has come up a couple times in the Q&A. Facebook does sponsor visas, so I just wanted to make sure. I know a lot of companies may not have the ability to do that. So I at least wanted to mention that any visa support should not preclude you from applying. So I just wanted to make sure that was maybe perhaps the last thing that we plugged.
Thanks. All right, and we'll be doing this again in 13 hours, is it? I think so. See you guys soon.
Second showing.
Take care.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.